Miro Heiskanen has been acknowledged as one of the best defensemen in the NHL, but only once in his career has he cracked the top 10 in Norris Trophy voting. Is this the year it all changes?
You're Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. I'm Joey Erickson, former producer of 105 Through the Fan. Please be sure to subscribe. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. And as always, thank you so much for making us a part of your day and making us your first listen. Not only is Miro Heiskanen a top 5 defenseman in the NHL, he has one of the best contracts in the entire league. I'll share with you today the top 10 contracts in the NHL according to The Athletic. Also, Thomas Harley, what is his next contract going to look like? It would be a great day to sign Thomas Harley, plus the Barrie Colts possibly becoming the Barrie Stars. They acquire another Dallas Stars prospect. I'll share with you that as well a bit later on today's show, which is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So Miro Heiskanen burst onto the scene as a rookie and continues to get better every single year. Is this the year it all comes together for number 4? Can he finally crack the top 5 in Norris Trophy voting? Albeit it was an absolute travesty. He only finished 7th in 22-23 when he accumulated 11 goals and 62 assists for 73 points. That was a career high, a franchise record as well. And he only finished 7th in the Norris Trophy voting. But that's sort of how it goes in the modern era of the NHL. You have to score a ton of points, and I think Miro was just on the outskirts of the top 10. He may have just been inside the top 10 in scoring that year as an NHL D-man. You got to put up a lot of points. You also have to be a pretty good defenseman, and Miro Heiskanen is one of the best two-way defensemen in the entire NHL. But the Athletic put out an article named the top 10 best contracts in the NHL in 2024, and Miro Heiskanen slots himself right in there at number 3 behind Jack Hughes and Gustav Forsling, who of course just won a Stanley Cup with the Florida Panthers and has been an absolute steal for them over the last couple of seasons. At 25 years old, Miro Heiskanen has an offensive rating of +13, a +5 defensive rating, and a +18 net rating. And it says here, a shocking truth, Heiskanen has only finished in the top 10 once in his career, which is pretty hard to believe. It says it's weird, but when voting relies a lot on production, it's hard for a consistent defensive ace such as Heiskanen to get his due. That he drives play to the degree that he does at both ends of the ice while playing the toughest minutes for Dallas is a big deal. Few defenders in the league can do what he can in all 3 zones. Maybe Heiskanen will finally get his due during the 24-25 season, but there should be no question regarding Heiskanen's league-wide standing regardless of the Norris votes. Amen to that. Heiskanen went up head-to-head against Jack Eichel in the postseason just a few months ago. He went up head-to-head against Rantanen and, of course, McKinnon. He also had to play against Connor McDavid and the Nugent Hopkins of the world and did a fabulous job, although he did run out of some gas towards the end, but so did everybody else around Miro Heiskanen. But can this be the year where it all comes together? He picks up the production, of course, is going to be a steady defender, and then boom, he breaks out, cracks the top 5 in Norris Trophy voting, perhaps even as a finalist. Perhaps he can win the darn thing because he has been undervalued since he stepped foot in the league, and he's starting to get some national recognition because of his playoff performance. And if you look at his playoff numbers in general, they're really remarkable. In 85 games, he has 61 points, 16 goals, and 45 assists. So he has 16 goals in 85 games in the playoffs. And throughout his career, 425 games, he has 53 goals during the regular season. He's only cracked double digits twice in the regular season, which is also a bit mind-boggling for how good he is offensively, and he will always be responsible in his own zone first. He will always take care of his own end before jumping up in the play. I'm hoping with the addition of players like Matt Dumba and Lyubushkin, who are right shot defensemen, if Pete DeBoer pairs Miro with Lyubushkin or Dumba, gets Miro on his strong side, maybe he's more apt or more willing to jump up into the play and be a bit more aggressive, like we saw Thomas Harley for large parts of last season. Even Esa Lindell, for the most part, who had a nice bounce back year. He was really, really strong in terms of moving up on the rush and joining the offensive trio up the ice. And Mike Heika put out a player profile, which came out at a perfect time when I wanted to record this, about Miro Heiskanen, and mentioned that he, of course, dipped in terms of points, but he generates a ton of numbers and consistency, and they have some expectations for him in 24-25. Of course, the left-handed defenseman has played the right side for the majority of his career, Mike Heika says, and the Stars seem comfortable with that. But still, with the loss of Tanev, Hakanpää, and Suter, they add Matt Dumba, Lyubushkin, and Smith, plus Niels Lundqvist is returning, so there is an option to move Heiskanen back to the left side. But the question is whether Dumba, Lundqvist, or Lyubushkin is the right fit to play beside him. Lundqvist doesn't feel like much of an option. I don't think they trust Lundqvist enough to play him alongside Miro Heiskanen, because Miro's going to play against the best of the best. They didn't trust Lundqvist to play 4 minutes in the postseason. I know the regular season's a different animal, but you can't shelter Lundqvist that much with a player like Miro Heiskanen. It would certainly help Lundqvist, but you don't want to come. You don't want it to come as a negative for Miro, because he's having to do extra work in order to hold up his partner, which he frankly might already have to do with a player like Dumba or Lyubushkin. That is certainly an option. I think Lyubushkin makes the most sense. We talked about this quite a bit over the last few months. Lyubushkin played with Morgan Riley at the end of this past season in Toronto and had really good numbers, and so did Riley. It wasn't just Lyubushkin, who's a bigger guy, doesn't look huge, but plays big, not afraid to be physical. And look at one of the best partners Miro Heiskanen ever had, besides Harley and the advanced numbers and all that says. Roman Polak was really strong, and that was a guy that was just your rugged veteran defenseman. Lyubushkin could be that partner for Miro Heiskanen. So I really am intrigued to see who Miro plays with, where he finds his most success. Obviously, that would come with Thomas Harley, but it would be nice for DeBoer, especially with the influx of right shots. Can you get them to be on his strong side? And maybe that helps his point totals as well. So Miro Heiskanen slots in at number 3 as a top 10 contracts in the NHL. Forsling is number 1. You have Jack Hughes at 2. Behind Heiskanen, you have Adam Fox, who he will inevitably be compared with for the majority of his career. They're both 25 years of age. The rear guard in New York, Morrissey, is at number 5, who had a really nice, strong season. He's really underrated player as well. Tkachuk at 6. Matthew Tkachuk, that is. You have Nathan MacKinnon at number 7. He makes a ton of money, but even then, he's still a steal at $12.6 million for 7 years. Hyman at 32 just had an incredible year at 8. Quinn Hughes at number 9. They ended up paying him early, and he's been every bit worth it, of course. It's more of a bridge deal at 7.85 over 3 years. So his next contract will be huge and will probably be a bit of a benchmark for Miro as well. But Miro still has, 6 or 7 years down the line before he even has to worry about re-signing. Boldy's at number 10 for Minnesota, who had a really, really nice breakout season at 22, 32 goals, 75-point pace. He's going to be a fixture in the Minnesota Wild lineup for the next few seasons. But Miro in there at number 3, and it really is hard to believe he hasn't cracked the top 5 in Norris Trophy voting. Number 7 in 22-23 was pretty preposterous. And if I'm not mistaken, I know I mentioned he was on the outskirts of the top 10. I'm pretty sure he was top 5 in point totals that year. I'm gonna have to fact check that. But if I'm not mistaken, I think he was up in the top 5, which makes this even more mind-boggling that he hasn't even been a finalist, because every year we get to April, right? We get to June, and everybody is watching the Dallas Stars in the playoffs over the past few seasons. They're like, yeah, this Miro guy is pretty stinking good. He's one of the best skaters I've ever seen. He's one of the best defensemen in the NHL, and he really is quiet and just sort of goes about his business. And Stars fans are like, yeah, that's what he does on a day-to-day basis. He usually is the best player on the ice on most nights, which is saying a lot. And he garners the best matchups. He garners the best players. And not only does he find a way to shut down opposing offenses and be the quarterback of the power play, he can pop off offensively. And he can penalty kill as well. I know the Stars were trying to take some of his minutes away last year, so he didn't penalty kill as much as I would have liked to see him, because they went through a rough stretch. And it's like, okay, you have your best defender. Why is he not killing penalties? He averaged 24 minutes and 32 seconds of time on ice. It was actually a minute down from that previous season. I could see that ticking back up with Tanev moving on as well. I don't know if DeBoer is going to have the luxury with players like Dumba and Lyubushkin playing significant minutes. Can he really afford to have Miro playing 22 to 24 minutes a night is probably the number that they would like to get him at, but it just really doesn't seem like it's going to be achievable with some of the new guys you're bringing in. Obviously, Harley, if he continues to elevate, that will certainly help as well, which we all assume Harley's going to progress. And speaking of Thomas Harley, what does his next contract look like? We've talked about it a ton. Jim Nill is not worried. He's not feeling the pressure of getting him done. He still believes they'll be able to get it done before training camp. But let's have another discussion on Thomas Harley in his next contract and what it could look like here in about a month or so. We'll do that in just a moment. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. We use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. You're busy. You don't have time to sit around and spend hours looking online for candidates. Use Indeed. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites. So join more than 3.5 million businesses and use Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about it on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Hey, Locked On Stars listeners, thank you so much for making Locked On Stars your first listen of the day. Go ahead and make your second listen Locked On NHL. Locked On NHL provides you a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day with national experts and local insights on every team of the league. It's available on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. So Thomas Harley has still not been re-signed. Happy birthday to Thomas Harley, by the way. It was his birthday a few days ago. So happy birthday to Mr. Harley, and we cannot wait to get him back. Taylor Newby put out an article on the hockeynews.com about the contract, which is still in question. The Stars, of course, went out in free agency, got all their work that needed to be done rather quickly, but we're still waiting to tie up the one loose end. And of course, that is Thomas Harley? She writes, so the question begs, what kind of contract does Harley warrant? On one hand, it would appear that Harley has established that he can be a reliable defenseman at the NHL level. But without the lack of history to support this claim, it could be a gamble to sign him to a big contract based on his play. And she goes on previously to write, in his first 40 games that were split between 21 and through the 23 seasons, he recorded just 6 points total, 1 goal and 5 assists, which is almost hard to believe with what we saw last season where he had 15 goals and 32 assists. Although the offensive aspect of his game has always been there, she says his stint in the AHL gave Harley the ability to be a two-way defenseman that the coaching staff could trust. And Big Head Hockey put out a tweet this summer and put down Harley's numbers, basically. His 47 points in 79 games. He was a plus 28, 135 blocks on ice for 3 goals against the penalty kill in 77 minutes of ice time. Had a 56.46 expected goals forward percentage. That was at 5-on-5. That was second amongst Stars D-men. Lo and behold, Miro Heiskanen was number 1. And then his market value, according to The Athletic, is $11.7 million. So we've sort of gone back and forth on this throughout the summer, and I'm on the record of saying, man, you just lock him up, you get him done. If that's long-term, you do it. It more than likely has to be short-term at this point. Of course, the Stars have about $6.2 million in cap space currently, and Evolving Hockey actually has his expected contract, as Taylor notes, at 2 years and $3.9 million. So can Jim Nill get close to that? I don't necessarily think so. I think it's going to be a bit higher. It does say the likelihood of this is 23.6%. I would assume he gets a bit more. But what Jim Nill has to factor in is they need another defenseman. They're going to have to acquire somebody at the deadline, in my opinion, to be a true contender in the Western Conference. Also, they're a contender. I don't know if they're a Stanley Cup favorite. They're a contender. But are they like get over the hump Western Conference final? That's the real question. And anybody can look at this back end and be like, yeah, they need another piece. They need another Tanev, right? So the more flexible room Harley and Nill can give the Stars with whatever contract Harley is going to get here, whether it's 3-4 years, the more flexibility the Stars will have to acquire a piece at the deadline. You can make it happen if you want a player enough. Look at what the Stars did with Tanev this past season. They got 75%, I believe, of his contract retained. You can make that happen. That's not always the case. So if Harley can take a deal that gives the Stars some room, it will allow them to be a bit more flexible at the trade deadline. But look, I won't have a ton of issues with what number he comes in at. And I know there may be some hesitancy because Harley didn't necessarily have a great playoff performance this past season, but I chalk that up to some experience, and he had a really good postseason run the year prior, but he was the 5th and 6th defenseman for the Stars at that time. They could play him up against better matchups. This past postseason, he's playing against the number ones. He's playing against top 6, and that comes with its own challenges. And I think that experience was very valuable, and I see him only improving. And that's why I share the sentiment. Who cares? Just lock him up, get him done, and forget about it. But it is important either way for the Stars and Harley to come to a deal where they feel it's best for both sides. And she also mentions here at the bottom of the article, which I love, concerns over the deal not being done have been quieted by Neil himself, stating that they are having healthy and consistent communication. Though training camp is a month away, Neil expects to get the deal done before then. Interestingly, the last player to miss training camp due to contract negotiations was Jason Robertson, and he went on to have a career best 100-point season. So maybe we get a Thomas Harley season like Heiskanen had a couple years ago. and he popped off for 73 points. That would be nice. And man, the Stars would certainly be in business. So a great piece by Taylor Newby was posted yesterday. Go read it in its entirety. It's on the hockeynews.com. They do great stuff over there. There's been some great pieces put out by numerous writers that are locked in on the Dallas Stars, which is great, like David Castillo as well, and really, really appreciate their consistent coverage of the Stars, number one, and just putting out great stuff. It not only helps me, but I think it helps all Stars fans be more informed, and it keeps the conversation flowing. Because as I've stated multiple times in this month, it can be a bit dry. There's a lot of stuff going on, though. Patrick Laine now is in Montreal. In case you have not heard, he was traded to the Habs for a second-round pick and a defenseman. I can't quite remember his name, but he's headed to Montreal. No cap hit was retained there. His salary's not retained by Columbus. The stud nutminder for the Predators, Askarov, has requested a trade. He requested a trade out of Nashville. So what is going on there? That's the number one goalie prospect. He's top 3 that has played a few games in the National Hockey League. So where could he end up? What is the package going to look like for him? I mean, there's been some movement. The offer sheets from St. Louis to Edmonton, which put the Oilers in a bind. Philip Broberg and Holloway are now St. Louis Blues. They did overpay for them, but hey, the offer sheet worked. Edmonton didn't want to match it, and they lost a couple pieces. So how about that? And all things considered, looks like a great move for the Blues. So yeah, there's been some movement here over the last few days or so. Maybe the Stars can get in on some of that as well. But anyways, the Barrie Colts, who we all know, Emil Hemming, the Dallas Stars first round pick from this most recent NHL draft, will be playing with this next season. They added another Stars prospect. I'll tell you who in just a moment. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you today. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Yes, you heard me right. A free 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket. Football is back. It's right around the corner. Then with the YouTube TV-based plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. So go ahead, go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to get hooked up. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Once again, just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. So the Barrie Colts perhaps may be becoming the Barrie Stars. They, of course, acquired Emil Hemming in the latest CHL import draft. So Emil Hemming will be playing with the Barrie Colts next season. And then it popped up on the Twitter timeline yesterday that the Barrie Colts have acquired Dallas Stars prospect Tristan Bertucci. Bertucci was acquired for Blair Scott, Jack Brody, a 2026 second-round pick, a third-round pick in 27, and a fourth-round pick in 25. So a pretty big haul for Niagara, but Bertucci is headed to Barrie. So congratulations to the Barrie Colts. So now 2 players all Stars fans can keep an eye on with Barrie next season in the Ontario Hockey League. Bertucci, for those of you who don't know, is a 19-year-old. He's from Ontario. He was a 2023 second-round pick by the Dallas Stars at 61st overall. And he played with the Flint Firebirds in the OHL this past season. In 61 games, he had 34 assists, 10 goals for 44 points. He is a defenseman, by the way. Had a 3 really nice seasons in Flint, 44 points. He had 50 in 22-23, which is current career high. And now he'll be making his way over to Barrie. So some exciting stuff there for Stars fans in general. A couple of Dallas Stars prospects will now be teaming up in Ontario, which I'm sure will make it a lot easier on the scouting staff to keep their tabs on him. And we'll see how it all plays out. I'm excited for Hemming, number one. Bertucci looks like a nice, solid little player. We'll look forward to seeing them in Texas down at Cedar Park and how that all transpires. Just a lot of good stuff in general when it comes to Stars prospects and their farm system right now. Bixel looks like he'll be starting in the AHL for cap space reasons, and I think many believe and have the belief that Bixel will become an impact player at the NHL level at some point this season, which is exciting. And that's the best case scenario for Dallas. If he is ready to go, as it looks like, man, the D-core improves drastically adding Bixel to the mix. Then you're talking about Lindell, who had a really strong season, Harley and Heiskanen. We know what we're getting out of them. You add Bixel to that mix, you feel more confident and comfortable about what you have on the back end. And then Dumba and Lyubushkin fill those cracks. And I have a better maybe appreciation for the Stars back end than I did, let's say, a couple of months ago when we're all sitting here like, what's going on? These don't really make sense, but they had to go out and get somebody, so they added these guys. We'll see how Dumba improves, hopefully, or maybe refines his game here in Dallas. I think Lyubushkin is the safer of the two at this point, which is a good sign. But Bixel seems like the real X factor here next season. So excited to see how it all plays out. But Barrie Colts go out and get Tristan Bertucci. So Hemming and Bertucci will team up with Barrie next season. And that's all for today's episode of Locked On Stars. A lot of fun to be with you on a Wednesday. Still 3 days a week. We're about a couple of weeks away from going back to every day right before training camp. And we'll be firing on all cylinders then. So some exciting stuff. I'm in the process of doing a little bit something different here in the next few weeks as well. Be sure to announce that at some point, but nothing pressing at all. I'll be sure to share that with all of you as well, because you're like my little community, another little family here on Locked On Stars. Thank you as always for the support and the amount of likes on each and every video. Please be sure to drop a comment below. Let me know how you're feeling. Drop a like, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell as well. Never miss an episode of Locked On Stars. Have a great rest of your day, Stars fans. We'll see you Friday. So long.